Hey everybody. You know, as a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, one of the things I've noticed on a lot of the message boards is a lot of people have been kind of talking about Ian in a way that, you know, they feel as though he's not really doing a good job on the comic. Now, I'm not here to defend Ian or anything. I mean, there have been some things that I will say Ian has done that really doesn't make any sense in the comic. I mean, I will give you that. I mean, I do agree. One of the things, and I mentioned this on a video that I did, using the extra normal characters, and extra normal, in case you don't know, is sort of a text slash video site where basically use these CGI characters, and what you do at extra normal, like I'm saying, is you use these CGI characters, and what you do is you type in what you want them to say, and they'll say it. So. But anyway, I used a video recently I did a video recently using that, and I basically explained, and basically I answered a question that I asked, and I posted this question on a lot of the Sonic forums, and that is, the question is, does Ian ignore past events and story arcs in the comics? And the question is, I believe he does. But the reason I believe Ian ignores them, like I said, is the fact that he just wants to be rid of them. I mean, like I said in the video, or like I had said in the video recently, which is up there, it's the newest one. Well, newest one before this. Technically, I believe Ian, he ignores what happened in the past, but he does acknowledge it. Now what that means is, he'll acknowledge it by saying something like there's a yellow panel, like there's a highlighted yellow box in a panel in 187, where we see a scene, where we have the scene of Sonic and Sally, and he says something in the yellow panel of who could forget that slap in 134. Now technically, coming from a fan standpoint, what he's saying is, how could any fan forget about that slap? How could we get that out of our minds? Technically, by saying that in that yellow box, he's saying that shouldn't have happened. And that's why, like I mentioned in that video, I believe, why Ian ignores some of the past events but does acknowledge them, if just, to acknowledge them, basically. Just acknowledge them and be over with. Let me put it to you like this. I know a lot of people feel as though a comic book writer, when they come in, should stick to the continuity. Shouldn't change anything, they should stick to the continuity and leave it at that. Well, here's the thing about the continuity. Here's the thing about continuity. When a writer comes in, some writers will stick to the continuity and will stick with what other writers have established. I mean, great examples of this can be seen in comic book titles like Superman and Batman and X-Men and Spider-Man, and the list goes on. Good examples right there. And yes, the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book has had that as well. But just like now in the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, other comic book titles, like the ones I've mentioned, have also had writers that have decided to do their own spin on things, and also do story arcs that will put a closure on things and events so that they won't be mentioned again. For example, let's take a look at the end of the story arc Other M in Spider-Man. Basically, a deal was made with the devil between Mary Jane and Peter Parker. basically the deal was to save them, they would have to forget everything that they ever did. Forget the fact that they were ever married, and even forget the fact that they were even boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, there was a lot of backlash on that because people wanted to see these two together. But instead, the writer that was writing the comic for that time, I don't know if he was new or not, decided he was going to end the marriage because, well, he feels as though probably Spider-Man doesn't need to be married right now. Peter Parker doesn't need to be married. But now I don't follow the book that much, I should, but anyway, what happens is that now they're trying to get the two back together, trying to get them to remember who they were and what their life was like. So, that's one example. I'll give you another example, and this is not out of the comic books, but this is straight out of television. This is straight out of television. Recently, Lynn Cara on the guy with the glasses.com, recently and currently, he's doing a sort of a history lesson or look back at the Power Rangers. And recently he did Zeo. And he said that one of the episodes called, which was a three-parter called There's No Business Like Snow Business, at the beginning of that three-parter, Tommy gets a Dear John letter from Kimberly. Now, what happened was basically Kimberly, even though she had a great send-off in the previous season, through this Dear John letter, was breaking up with Tommy. Now, according to Lynn Cara, there was a lot of backlash from the fans. A lot of backlash for this because they wanted the Kimberly and Tommy characters to stay together. But instead, that was pushed aside for a Cat-Tommy relationship. Go figure. But anyway, what I mean by this, now the reason I'm using this for an example is this is exactly why some people are upset at, a writer like Ian. Because this writer, whoever did this episode, whether it was a new writer or one of the same writers from the beginning of the show, I don't know. But this writer decided to take a relationship that was a strong part of the continuity and just throw it away. And just throw it away and basically act like it never existed. And then completely ignore that fact for the rest of the Tommy Oliver tenure on the show. And this is exactly how fans feel about Ian Flynn. And I do agree, there are some things that he should at least explain and elaborate on, but he won't because to him, that never happened. It doesn't exist. Another good example is getting back to Lynn Cara. He did a three-parter on the Justice League of America Act of God comic. And basically everything that takes place here in this comic is done by a different writer, a writer that's, I guess, in favor of one character. But because of this writer, I can't think of his name right now, a lot of the characters' personalities change, and they become something that they're not. In other words, what Lynn Cara was basically saying is that what this writer did was take everything that these characters were and threw it away and acted like and made them act like it was not